Guys, we're going to pick up where we left off. We're on page 144, house with a clock in its walls. At night, the fountain was lit up, and it turned from red to orange, from orange to yellow, from yellow to blue, from blue to green, and back to red again. But right now it was clear. Louis wished his mind was clear too, but it wasn't. He walked around the fountain 3 or 4 times, and then he crossed the street and started to walk up US 9, which took up where Main Street left off and led out of town. When he got to the square, Tin City Limits sign, he just walked off into some tall grass and sat there watching ants crawl and listening to the cars as they whooshed past. His eyes were dry now. He was through crying. It occurred to him that he had been doing a lot of crying lately. That wasn't going to solve anything. Thinking might help, though, and he wasn't sure it would. He sat and thought, and he tried to make up his mind about what to do. It was late in the afternoon when Louis got up. He almost fell over because his leg had gone to sleep after he had stomped around in the weeds for a little while to get the circulation going. Again, he set out for home. His mind was made up. All he could hear in his head was the old church hymn that ran, "Once to every man and nation comes the moment to decide in the strife of truth with falsehood for the good or evil side." He imagined that he was leading a cavalry charge. If he had one of Jonathan's canes with him, he would have swung it like a sword. Now and then he stopped, felt goose pimples, shivers, run in waves through his body. He felt very proud and brave and frightened too. It's a hard thing to describe. That night, long after everyone had gone to sleep, Louis crawled out of bed and tiptoed down the front of the stairs. The house was quiet, very quiet, because it was one of those nights when Jonathan had stopped all the clocks, all but the one he couldn't stop. Out in the front hall, the mirror on the coat rack was talking to itself amid little bursts of static. Now and then, its edges flickered faintly. Maybe it was trying to warn Louis. If it was, he ignored the warning. His mind was made up. He had started this whole horrible business, and now he was going to try to end it. His hand rested on the cool lip of the Willowware umbrella stand. He groped among the canes, rattling them a good deal. Ah, there it is. His hand closed on the back wooden rod. And what was this? Louis pulled his fingers away with a sucked-in gasp. Touching the magic cane was like touching a living human arm. Life pulsed through it. Louis stood there, staring at the cane. Its globe was now faintly lit, and the gray light he saw snow swirling, and there, shadowy but real, was the strange little castle. A magic light cast a pale shaking blotch on the wallpaper. Could he use it? This thing of power? It occurred to him that Jonathan was being very modest when he called himself a parlor magician. Louis set his teeth and reached out with a hand that still tingled from the shock it had received. He grasped the rod firmly. He drew it out. The globe sizzled and cracked and turned from gray to rosy pink and then to gray again. Now he opened the front door. A wet, fresh-smelling breeze blew in and banged the door gently against the wall. The leaves of the chestnut tree drifted inside, and white blossoms came sailing down. He looked across the street. Despite the overgrown hedge, he could see that there were lights on in the Hanchett house. Muttering a prayer, he started down the steps. In the middle of the street, he almost turned and ran, but something kept him going. Once he had crossed to the other side, it seemed easier to go on. It was like running downhill with wind pushing you. The hedge parted at the brick walk that led up the front step. Louis walked in under the overhanging branches. Now he was at the bottom of the steps. The Hanchett house had an old-fashioned double door of black wood and 2 frosted panes set in it. The panes had always reminded Louis of the 10 Commandments, but now he thought, "Thou shalt not enter." But one door panel stood ajar. Was he expected? His heart was pounding. But he went up. He stopped just inside the door, under the hall lamp. The corridor was empty and bare. There wasn't a stick of furniture in it. No chairs, chests, or little tables. No umbrellas propped against the wall. On the pale rose-colored paper, Louis saw dark squares. The squares were the color of the paper had been when it was new. The Hanchetts had hung pictures in these spaces, but now the pictures were gone. Mrs. O'Meager had not put up any of her own. Louis walked quietly to the wide arch that opened into the living room. No one there. Some furniture, but not much. A few weak-looking little chairs and with bow legs, an uncomfortable-looking couch, one low coffee table, and two postage stamp-sized china ashtrays. One blow from Jonathan's flat-bottomed pipe would have smashed either one to smithereens. Louis went from chair to chair, touching polished arms and smooth upholstery backs. He half expected the furniture to pop with soap bubbles when he touched it. But everything was solid. The floor was so highly polished that you could see your reflection in it. Over on one wall was a brick fireplace. It was painted bright pink all over, even in its inside walls. There was no soot stains. Apparently the old witch didn't like fires. Two birch logs were balanced neatly on the shiny brass bars. On the mantelpiece, Louis saw something that surprised him, an ornament. It was one of those whirly gigs with the tin cutout angels. You lit the candle in the middle, and the heat made the angels go around. These angels were blowing trumpets. Louis reached up and touched the little wheel. Squee! It spun tipsily. The sound startled him so much that when he whirled around, holding the magic cane for protection, no one was there. He looked in the kitchen. A couple of little plaster plaques on the wall, an electric clock, a red formica counter, and a tubular steel chair, also upholstered in cherry red. In the corner, there was an icebox. He opened it and found one bottle of Coke. Or was it a Coke? He turned the bottle over in his hands. It was gritty on the outside, covered in dirt like it had been buried, and the liquid inside was lighter than Coke, sort of brownish red. Louis put the bottle back. He shut the icebox door. The house seemed to be filled with a humming noise, and he knew that it was his blood in his ears. Gripping the magic cane with a trembling, sweaty hand, he went to inspect the other rooms. He checked out the whole first floor, but he found nothing. Nothing more than half-furnished rooms. A chair here, a table there. What lamps there were unplugged, but a bare ceiling fixture burned in each room. Now Louis was at the bottom of the brightly lit staircase. He paused for a moment, and then, suddenly, he pounded the cane on the floor and shouted, "I have come to defeat you, Mrs. Izzard. Show yourself. Are you afraid of me? You ought to be. I know who you are and what you want to do. I challenge you to a duel by the ancient rules of magic." Louis had expected his challenge to sound grand and majestic, to ring high in the clear like a blast on silver trumpets. Instead, it fell flat. It died away in the heavy stillness of the house. Louis felt foolish. His cheeks burned, and he began to get worried. Louis did not know a blessed thing about the ancient rules of magic. He had come over here with Jonathan's magic stick in his hand, hoping that the stick would do his work for him. Now he was doubtful. What if the cane wouldn't work for anybody but its master? What if Mrs. Izzard's magic was stronger than Jonathan's? Louis looked at the burning globe, and he looked at the staircase. He felt like turning around and running home as fast as he could. But then how could he save Mrs. Zimmerman and Jonathan in the world, and make up for what he had done? The house was very silent. Louis took a deep breath and started to climb the staircase. Halfway up the stairs, on the broad landing, Louis stopped to look at a picture. It was the only picture he had seen in the house. There, in a heavy oval black frame, was a photo of an unpleasant-looking old man. He was sitting or standing, you couldn't really tell, against a wall covered with intricately patterned wallpaper. Louis looked at the picture for a long time. He took in all the details, the 2 or 3 strands of hair combed over the almost bald head, the deep-set eyes that seemed to be staring right at him, the hawkish nose. He looked at the man's clothing. He was wearing an old-fashioned stiff cardboard collar with folded back points, and his left hand rested on the ball of what must be the cane. There appeared to be some writing on the cane, but Louis couldn't read it. Louis stood there wondering who the old man was. Could it be? He snatched the picture down and looked at the back. No label. Quickly, he turned it over and stared at the picture again. Something was familiar. Of course. The wallpaper. It was the wallpaper in the upstairs front hall. Roman numeral 2s hooked together with a... hooked together with curly cues. Sorry. Louis knew that now, and he was staring at the picture of Isaac Izzard. Then it was true. This woman was his wife, come back from the grave to do what? Louis felt his heart pounding. He was more scared than he had ever been in his entire life. He didn't want to fight Mrs. Izzard anymore. He just wanted to get out. He looked frantically at the stairs towards the dark hallway of the bedroom. No one was coming. He started down the stairs, but Mrs. Izzard was in the way. She stood there smiling. In her hand was an ivory-handled cane. Well, young man, what is it? What makes you think you could roam around other people's houses at night? What do you want? We are going to end there, and we will pick back up tomorrow. It's getting good. Leave a comment. Let us know what you're thinking, how you're feeling. If you have any questions, definitely post a question. All right.